Aloha! So I realise it's been a while since I last filmed. Quite honestly, I've been really busy, just with a couple of different things. I started a new job, and also I felt really unmotivated to film anything. I kind of feel like I've been in a little bit of a creative rut recently. However, I recently placed an order on Salt New York. For those of you that don't know Salt New York, are they a Canadian-based brand? I think they're based in Canada. They might be in the US, but I think it's Canada. And they basically create these absolutely beautiful custom like magnetic palettes, but they're in like a faux vegan leather. I am a vegan. You can basically get two different colours, so you get this grey, or I believe they've got a darker colour, but that one wasn't available. And they look like this, so they look like this almost like really beautiful purse design. So you buy the palette and then you can fill it with shades of cream products that you desire. So they do, they're called the Radiant Creme Pros, and they do highlights, bronzers, and also a variety of different blush tones. So I've had my eye on these for a long time. Basically, I always remember that Samantha Ravndal, one of my favourite YouTubers and kind of content creators on this platform, mentioned these a couple of years ago, and since then I've always wanted to try them, and I recently thought, you know what, I'm going to pull the plunge, take the plunge, and I'm going to do it. So yeah, this video is just going to be a little bit, I have played with these a couple of times, but nothing too in depth, and so I thought it'd be quite cool just to have a little bit of a play. So I got two of each formula. So I got two of the Radiant Creme Pros, which are the highlights. I got two of the Sculpting Bronzing Creme Pros, and then I got two of the blushes. So the highlights I've got, and I will insert swatches here. I have Pearl, Beige, Light Medium, Medium, Peach, and Spice. As I say, I wanted to get a couple of each just because I didn't know which kind of textures I'd prefer, and also I think I can see myself using this a lot. I do want to talk about the packaging though, because this is the single most beautiful magnetic palette I own. It feels so luxe, it's so heavy. The zip feels really luxe, like it feels like so much attention to detail has gone into this. You get a really decent size mirror. Oh wait, can you see yourself? Well, you can see all my lighting and stuff. But this is really beautifully like made. Just all the detailing is just so stunning. And I mean, I own so many magnetic palettes. Like I own this one from Adept, which is absolutely gorgeous. You know, and beautiful and lovely. I've got another one from Adept that I absolutely adore. Bear with me a second. This marble one, which is double-sided. It's really, this is a thick boy. It's double-sided. You open it like this, and that houses like all my Colourpop shades. But for me, there's something so much more kind of practical about this. I can see myself taking this to places. I know for a fact that if I throw it in my bag or my suitcase or whatever, not that we're going anywhere at the minute, there's nothing happening to this because it feels so solid. But aside from all that beauty, it's the products that I'm really excited about. For those of you that don't know, I use cream products, cream bronzers, blushes, highlights, every time I do my makeup. I still put a powder over them because I like to add as much definition as possible. But I will never do my face makeup without creams, or sometimes my eyes actually. And so yeah, we're going to be trying these out a bit. So I'm going to insert swatches now, just so you can have an idea of the shades. So here we have the swatches. So we have the two highlights, so we have Pearl and Beige. Then the two bronzers, we have Light Medium and Medium. And then the two blushes, and we have Peach and Spiced. I didn't say it earlier, but all of the shades in this palette I selected and I paid for, and I bought them in a bundle. So if you buy a palette and some of the inserts, you can use the code, I believe it's bundle, and you get 30% off your entire purchase. So So I believe this palette is it $35, which is obviously quite expensive, and then each of the Creme Tint Pros are $18 each, but when you get that 30% off code, it is pretty decent. And I will say, these, as I say, these feel really luxe, and when I pay, you know, like I've got a Tom Ford eye duo and it's a completely different thing, but like this is £51 for like a cream shadow and a powder. So when you look at it that way, I think this is actually really, really decent, kind of bang for your buck. I want to be doing some comparisons today as well to other products I have as I'm applying them. So I've got a couple of cream bronzers, a couple of like cream highlights, just to kind of contrast and compare. But let's get to playing. So we're going to bronze first, because that's what I do first. I have done my base, but this is completely unpowdered. So all I've got on my skin at the moment is I moisturised, toned, you know, did my whole like skincare routine. But then I've got the e.l.f. Mint Cooling. Can you even see? Oh, why is that not focusing? The e.l.f. Cooling Face Primer. This is really nice. This reminds me a lot of the Milk Makeup Hydro Grip, but that was breaking me out. To be fair, I never owned it. I only tried someone else's, and it wasn't my favourite. But this is really, really nice. It doesn't really smooth pores or anything like that, but it just gives my skin like a nice base to work on top of. And then as my complexion products, I have the Too Faced Peach Perfect matte foundation, which I'm trying really, really hard to burn through this because I've had it for so long. But I did mix, because it is quite a matte foundation and that's not really my vibe, I did mix a little bit of my Becca Ignite liquefied highlighter in Ignite. This is too dark for me to use as a liquid highlight, but as a mix into foundation it works perfectly. So yeah, that's all that's on my skin. So let's go in with these. So just so you've seen the swatches, but I'm going to go in with light medium first, and I'm going to take it on a Spectrum B01 brush, which is just like a flat topped kabuki brush. This looks disgusting. It has had foundation on it before, but I've quickly like spot cleaned it. But yeah, we're going to dip really, really lightly into light medium, and we're going to start applying this to my cheeks. Just going to take a mirror. So all I like to do with these is just stamp them on like so and start working them in. Hopefully you'll see straight away that these are quite sheer products. There's nothing too crazy about kind of pigmentation, but what you're hopefully going to start seeing is just how skin-like these look. Like, they don't look heavy, they have a really slick, balmy texture. And this is an important note, all three different products, even though they're all Creme Tint Pros, all have a slightly different texture. So the sculpting ones, the bronzing ones, are probably the thickest and most robust, less slick of the three in terms of formula. And so I feel like they deposit colour quite evenly, and they don't have as much of a gloss to them as the other products do, which I'll get to in a minute. Oh, my laptop's shouting at me. So yeah, I feel like you can layer these up though. As you can see, I'm building it up, and we've definitely got some dimension in comparison to this side of my face. I think light medium is probably a touch too light for me. It's a very, very natural bronze. Whereas I'd want usually to go for something a little bit more, and I suspected that would be the case, so which is why I got a medium as well. So I'm just going to tap into the medium really lightly too, and I'm going to really slowly just build on top of that bronzer. And as I say, these are quite slick and emollient, but they're not as slick as some of the other products that I'll talk about in a minute. But I'm obsessed with the way that looks. Like, it just looks so skin-like to me. It doesn't look like makeup, and this is a pretty heavy foundation for me as well. Like, I wouldn't normally wear a foundation this thick, but I just think that looks beautiful. So I have found, before I finish that side of my face, there are a couple of comparisons I want to make between this and other products. And the first one is the Fenty, God, that is disgusting, I should have actually cleaned that before I came on. This is the Fenty Beauty Cream Bronzer, and this is in the shade Macchiato. And between this and the Chanel bronzer before I picked this up, were the only cream bronzers I used, really. But this is such a gorgeous, gorgeous texture. I really enjoy it. And I think this is probably the most comparable product I have in terms of the bronzers to the Salt New York Sculpting Radiant Cream Pros, because there is very, very similar texture. However, I will say that the Cream Pros are a little bit slicker. This is the Radiant Cream Pro, this is the Fenty. They're a little bit slicker. They move a lot more, they're a lot more emollient. So if you have really oily skin, and this goes for all of the Salt New York products that I'm going to show you, I don't know that they will be the best, or if you're really concerned about oil, because I have quite oily skin and I still love it. But for me, because these are slicker, because they're thinner feeling, they're not quite as thick or robust feeling, they just sit so beautifully on the skin, and they give my skin this like finish, this really, really radiant kind of, not oily, but like just a really sheeny finish that I really enjoy. But that's where the blushes really shine. And just before we get onto blushes, I do have the Chanel Healthy Glow Bronzing Cream, which is the newer version of Soleil Tan de Chanel. This is a completely different texture. This is not like the other two at all. This is almost like really whipped and moussey feeling. It's a very, very light colour. You don't ever get very much coverage out of it. So yeah, that's a completely different texture. I still really like this one, but I do feel, spoiler alert, that the Salt New York is my favourite cream bronzer formula. Now let's get onto the one that I'm really, really excited about, and I'll finish this side of my face later. But let's get onto the blushes, because the cream blushes are probably the thing I'm the most excited about from this. So as I say, I picked Peach and I picked Spice, because first of all, I think these tones are really interesting. Peach I've seen before. I think we've all seen a kind of like pinky peach, slightly corally colour before. But Spiced is such an interesting colour because it looks really purple in the pan. When you put it on the face, and I'll use it in a minute, it kind of has more of a neutral brown base to it, which I really, really like. I'm actually probably going to use both blushes today. In terms of texture, these are so much thinner and so much more emollient than the bronzers. They almost melt in your fingers, and because of that, they are so much more balmy and glossy. And again, I've got so many cream blushes that I could compare it to, but I have found a formula that I think this is exactly the same as, and that's the Patrick Tar Cream Blush Duo. Oh my god, look at that, the fingerprint! And that is the Patrick Tar Double Take Cream and Powder Blush, and this is the one in the shade Shiso LA, and it's the same as the cream formula down here, so you can see hopefully how slick and balmy and glossy that is, and it melts in your finger in the exact same way that the Salt New York one does. And honestly, I'm just so impressed with this formula, and so you can imagine how delighted I was to find out that the Salt New York replicates that formula at a price point that's so much lower than the Patrick Tar, and also where I don't have to buy a duo, I don't have to buy a powder, because I'll be honest, I don't use this powder nearly as much as I use the cream, so I can find other shades and colours that I can't get here. So yeah, I'm over the moon. I'm going to take the same brush as I used for the bronzer, but I've just taken some of that excess product off, and we're going to go into Peach. These are surprisingly really pigmented. Even though they're quite sheer, the amount of pigment you get straight away is really impressive. So all I've done is picked that up on that same brush, and I'm just going to start layering it on. And can you see how intense that is? So that looks quite clown-like to begin with. All I'm going to do is just take my brush on the back of my hand and just start melting this product into the skin. And hopefully you can see how well it blends out. It's looking really harsh on camera, it's looking really, really strong. It doesn't look like that strong in person, so I'm just going to take my sponge and just go over that. I'm also going to blend that concealer out, because dear me, that looks awful. But yeah, I just think it looks so radiant and pretty. Oh, I can't get enough of these cream blondes blushes. But yeah, I just think they're really, really lovely. Nothing too harsh, and I'm going to go in now with a bit of spice on that same brush and keep that towards my temples, just to deepen these up a bit. So initially they go on so pigmented, but they just blend so effortlessly. And one thing that I'm really impressed with is, despite feeling so balmy and kind of wet and creamy and emollient, they don't pick up my foundation at all, which is really super impressive. So then finally I'm going to go in with the Radiant Creme Pros. So I'm actually going to go in with this shade, which is beige. I like to take this on my finger, honestly. So this is the Radiant Creme Pro. Hopefully you can see there's a bit of blush here, but just ignore it. It's the Radiant Creme Pro is here. And I have a dupe for this, and I am also, again, happy to report that this is probably my most favourite makeup product ever. And these are the Dominique Cosmetics Skin Glosses. So this is the shade Glossed Peach. You can tell I love this product. I will say that the Dominique Cosmetics Skin Glosses are a little wetter. They're not quite as robust as the Salt New York ones. But if you're looking for a similar kind of thing, so Dominique Cosmetics, Salt New York, you can see hopefully how similar those textures are. And so if I go in with a bit of this one from Salt New York, I'm going to press that on my nose and on the high point of my cheek, and then just take a sponge and press that into the skin. And it just gives this gorgeous, gorgeous radiance that I'm really, really in love with. I think it looks so, so, so beautiful. Okay, awesome. I'm going to go and finish up the rest of my makeup, or at least for now, and then I'm going to show you how it layers on top of powder as well, because I have noticed that with a lot of cream products you can't do that. You can't use a powder and then go in with the cream. These, surprisingly, you can, so I'll be back in a second. Okay, I'm back. So all I've done is just lightly powdered my skin using the Marc Jacobs Invisible Finish Line Perfecting Setting Powder. Can we talk about how devastated I'm going to be when I can't buy this anymore, because Marc Jacobs is now not going to be a brand anymore. Yeah, this is one of my favourite loose powders ever. I think it's beautiful. So I've just gone in really, really lightly with that. What happens usually with creams when you powder them down is the cream will diminish in colour, it won't be as pigmented. I think this looks really natural, and actually I really, really like the way that this looks. But I do want to show you that you can add that colour back without using other powder products. I would typically still go in with powder products over this, but I want to show you that these creams do work. So I'm going to take the same brush that I was using for them before, and all we're going to do is just reinforce a bit of that colour. So I'm going to go in with light medium, the bronzer, and I'm really lightly going to just touch up over the top of powder where that bronzer was. And hopefully you can see it just melts into the skin. It's not picking up my foundation. It's sat as beautifully as it did when the foundation was unset. And for me that's really quite impressive that it can do that, because I've not found, some of my favourite cream products, the Patrick Tar one, I can't put this over a powder because it just lifts, because it's too balmy, it's too glossy. So even though these feel very similar, I find that these don't lift my foundation. The Fenty Cream Bronzer is okay actually, that kind of goes on top of powder. But the Fenty Cream Blushes, God help you if you try putting these over powder, because it just lifts and ruins your foundation. But these just look beautiful. So I'm going to take a bit of spice, tap it on the back of my hand, really lightly press that into the skin. And again, just make sure you're stippling, don't kind of rotate your brush, because that's when you're going to start finding this lifting product. But if you stipple, it looks beautiful. So I'm just going to finish this side up. And then the exact same with the Radiant Tint Pros. Let's actually go in with a bit of pearl this time. And I'm just going to tap it on my nose. God, look at that shine. Tap it on the tops of my cheeks. Oh. I will say I do prefer beige. I prefer the tone of beige so much more. I just find this a bit icy. But I'm just going to take my beauty blender and just kind of pat over the top of that, just to make it mesh into my skin. And this is exactly how I use the Dominique Cosmetics skin glosses. I use them every day for this exact purpose. And just look how healthy my skin looks. Like, God, I love it. And this foundation was not my favourite when I first put it on, but right now I'm super, super happy with how this is looking. And one thing I am really, really impressed by with this palette is you can use it. Sometimes I will use a cream base for my eyeshadow, just because I find that other colours blend really, really well on top of it. So sometimes it'll be a liquid shadow, sometimes it'll be a cream bronzer or a liquid bronzer. These work phenomenally as cream transition shades. So I'm going to show you that now. I'm going to go into the shade medium, just with a Hank & Henry Meg crease brush. And I'm really lightly just going to tap out whatever's on my lid to get rid of any creases. I'm actually going to take a different mirror. And I'm really lightly going to start moving that into my crease. And the reason I do this is because I find that cream shadow and cream products will always blend so much easier than a powder shadow. And this is the exact same with these guys. Can you see how effortless that was? Like, that took 0.3 seconds and it's blended. And so then what I would do is just keep building that up into a smooth transition, like that. And then I'm going to just take a bit more of medium and lay it on the outer corner. And you could stop here, you could leave it like that, but because I have really oily skin, I would probably then top this. So I'm just going to go in with a tiny bit more medium because I do just want a little bit more depth right here. And you can see it's building on itself. Like, that took 0.3 seconds. So then with the same brush, I'm just going to take that off on my hand. And we're just going to grab a random palette. I'm just going to grab my Charlotte Tilbury Stars in Your Eyes palette. And we're going to go into this like pinky shade right here on that same brush. And we're just going to layer it into that bronzer. And so we've got this really beautiful backdrop for those powders to sit on top of. And the blend that I'm getting and that I'm able to get is so effortless and so quick and easy, and yet so effective. So I'm just going to take a little bit of this. This is not tutorial, by the way. I'm just going to take a little bit of this brown and just kind of press this on the outer corner. Like so. And blend into those other shades. And it's just made it so easy to get this really kind of effortless, simple, and yet really effective blend, which I'm super impressed with. And I'm going to do the same with the Radiant Creme Pros as well. So I'm going to take a bit of the shade Pearl, which is like really, really light one we used on our face after powder, and I'm going to pop that on as a cream shadow. And you will see it's very sheer. Like, look at the reflex and the shine on it. It gives me that kind of like glass skin, glossy eye vibe. Oh, it's so pretty. And then again, this is probably going to crease, so I'm going to set it with a powder. But one really good thing about this is I can then, I'm just going to take that same brush and just take a little bit of that product off. Let's go in with this satin shade right here. And I'm just going to layer this over. And that kind of, that cream base gives that shadows something to stick to. And it's so much more impactful. I'm just going to take a bit of this bronze and just lay that on the outer corner. But there, like the quickest eye look in the world, and I think it looks gorgeous. I'm so impressed with these products and how versatile they can be. So yeah, I'm going to finish up the rest of my makeup and then I'll be back to kind of just give a little bit of a rundown. Alright, so I will see you in a second. So all I did really quickly is I finished up my makeup. The only things I added was a little bit of my Benefit Roller Lash for my mascara. I've only just started using this, and I do work for Benefit now. I swear to God, this is probably my most favourite mascara I've ever tried. The way it curls my lashes and gives me lashes that I never usually have is just so impressive. I set my face with a little bit of this PS Zen setting spray from Primark. On my lips I have the Fenty Beauty Gloss Bomb in Taffy Tease, and then I have a little bit of my Barry M freckle tint on as well. So yeah, to round up, I've not added any bronzer, any blush, anything else. I've not gone back in with these at all, just so you can have a look at how my skin looks and how these products sit and how they look with a finished kind of face. So do I recommend the Salt New York palette or the Salt New York Creme Tint Pros? The short and simple answer is 110%. I think these are probably some of my most favourite products that I've ever used. I can see myself travelling with this because of how beautiful this is. I can see myself popping a couple of single shadows in here as well, because I can always move these down. I'm going to do this really shoddily, really quickly, but I can move these down and stick some shadows or some other products up in here, so it's a perfect all-in-one travel palette. I just think this is beautiful. I love each and every formula in here. The highlights replicate very closely my favourite skin glosses ever by Dominique Cosmetics, and the fact that I go through these so quickly, it's nice to have another alternative. The cream blushes are beautiful, one of my favourite cream blusher formulas I've ever tried. Again, my favourite cream blush formula ever was the Patrick Tar, and these are so incredibly similar, except the cream blush in here does pick up my foundation after powder. This doesn't, so this even beats my favourite Patrick Tar blush. And then yeah, the bronzers. The bronzers are probably not my least favourite because I actually think they're spectacular, but they're the product that I don't think is an absolute standout because they are so similar to my Fenty Beauty Cream Bronzer. But that being said, when you can have it in a palette with all of these other amazing, beautiful products, for me, Salt New York wins. So I am so happy I finally bit the bullet and decided to purchase these because I don't regret it even slightly, and I can see myself using these day in, day out. And I think you're going to be sick of seeing them on my Instagram and also on my YouTube channel and in tutorials and stuff, because I don't think I'm going to be able to put these down. So yeah, I want to say as well really quickly that shipping wasn't too expensive. I think it was about $15. But again, because of the discounts, that's kind of standard to get it to the UK. I didn't pay customs, and also it arrived so incredibly quickly. Usually I wait for about a month, maybe a month and a half for a product to come. This came in 2 to 3 weeks. I can't remember exactly, but it was between that point. So yeah, I'm just so impressed with this. It was packaged so beautifully. Yeah, if you're looking to get a couple of cream products, if you want a magnetic palette itself that feels sturdy and looks different to a typical Z palette, I think this is just such a beautiful investment. So yeah, I thoroughly recommend check out Salt New York if you haven't. But yeah, I'll see you soon because I'm going to go play with these a bit more because I think they're beautiful.